VIP TDM Test Data Allocation 101, Creating Basic Allocations. By the end of this session, you will be able to create some basic SQL Server test data allocations. Please make sure you have the latest version of VIP installed and you have downloaded the TDM utilities. These are the key features of data allocation. Please press pause to have a good look at them. Now let's get into the data allocation training. So on the C drive we've got a folder called VIP TDM and we're going to go into the data allocation folder. First thing, we're going to create some sample tables, so we're going to have a quick look at those, and there's about 5 of them, and we're just going to put in a little bit of data. So we're going to, in this case we're using SQL Server. You can download SQL Express if you don't have it, or just use your local SQL Server instance. We're going to put them into the AdventureWork database. I'm just going to press F5, and that's now created some tables. So you'll see in here we have some country tables, some customers, and we're going to be looking primarily at products and order items. So these are our order items. So that's what we're going to be going to do the allocation for. So let's go back to the VIP TDM data allocation folder. Now all of the allocations and the definitions are actually stored inside a spreadsheet. So we're going to start with a little spreadsheet called starter.xlsx, and I'm going to rename it. So I'm just going to call it Q. So that's that, and that is in effect what's going to control the allocation, and it's what we're going to be running to look inside the database, find the right data, and then allocate the data to specific tests. Now you'll see configuration, test criteria, and allocated tests. Now the first thing is a configuration. If you're in here, you'll see active yes. You've got to give the connection a name, so I'm giving it Adventure SQL 2016, and then you're going to have a connection string that looks like that. Now it's already set up for AdventureWorks, but you'd obviously change this and put your own passwords in, and you're going to find the source database, the schema, and the database type, like so. The next thing you need to think about is the test criteria. So before we get into specifying the test criteria, let's just go into our SQL Management Studio, and here we're going to be looking at some products. Now you can see there's all sorts of different types of products. For what I'm going to be looking at is I need to allocate products where the package is equal to small. So I'm just going to try it by running the SQL first. You can see there are 3 of them. Now in here you've got basically the criteria. I'm going to actually copy that because I need that for my test criteria, and I'm going to pop that in there. Now I'm going to define active yes, SQL or flow. In this case we're going to get a database, and now I need to give this test type a name, so I'm just going to call it small package, like so, and I need to give it a connection name, so I'm going to connect into the logical name here, which was Adventure SQL 2016. I'm going to pop that over like so, and I'm going to put that in there. So far I've defined package small, but I haven't actually said what table it's associated with. So I'm going to go and pick that up, and that is my product table. So I'm just going to pull in the product table, pop that in like so. So that is going to allow me to go and pull out a small package from the product table. You don't need to worry about these other ones will be auto-populated. Now we do need the key name, which is the unique identifier of the row that we're going to be allocating. So in this case it's ID, and we can pick that up from the primary key, or you could actually pick combinations of columns if you want to as well. So here it's ID, and that is our test criteria. Now I need to go and create some allocated tests. So what I'm going to do is come in here, I'm going to say active. I'm going to set this tag to product because I might want to actually run my allocation just associated with specific types of tests. I'm going to give this a test name, product 1. Now the test type is again coming from my test criteria, which is small package, and I'm going to pop that in, and I'm going to say unique find yes. Now that means I'm only going to have this test is going to uniquely allocate the ID to this specific test. I'll show you how that works a bit later. I'm going to say I want one of them. So this is a very basic test criteria, a small package which is called small package. I then got a test called product1, which I'm allocating to small package. Now I'm now going to save this spreadsheet, and then I'm going to run my allocate, and I'm going to populate my allocated values. Let's just save this. I'm going to go back to my data allocation. Now I need a command script to do that. Now what I'm going to do is take one of the existing ones, which is the simplest one, TestDataAllocation. I'm going to copy that, and I'm just going to rename it to Hue. Now this is going to allow me to run this from a command script. You could also run it from our portal, but for the moment we're just going to allow you to run it in an ad hoc manner. I need to edit this. So you'll see here, this is the standard VIP executor, which is running the flow. But you'll see in here we need to tell it what spreadsheet we're running. So I'm actually going to hard code in hue.xlsx like so. So that is now saved, and now I can go off and actually run my command script. So let's just go into a command. You can see here that I've already switched into the VIP TDM data allocation folder, and if I just run hue.command, this is now going to run the data allocation process. You'll see that it's referring to the hue.slx file, and it's now going to then look in the backend database and allocate a specific product to my test case product1. So that's finished. So you'll see a bunch of log messages there. Now if you go back to the data allocation folder, first thing to do is to go and have a look at the report.txt. Now it will show you any SQL that's been run, and this is a very useful way of making sure the SQL you've entered is correct. You know, if you're doing joins and wheres and group bys, etc., this is actually the SQL that's been constructed, and it'll give you a little report. Unique new is 1, and if we just go now and look at our allocated tests inside our hue.xlsx file, you'll see the test criteria has actually had a couple of extra columns populated. And now we go to allocated tests, and you'll see product test name product1, small package, unique find yes 1, and the allocated value is 5, which is, if we go back up here, you'll see it's taken the ID 5, which is handmade plastic bacon, and actually populated that into our spreadsheet. So now we're going to move on, and we're going to make the some additional tests and make it a little bit more sophisticated. So let's go back to our test criteria, and what we need to do now is we're going to copy this row, and this type is just going to be called package, and package equals small. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to parameterize it. So I'm going to put %1 in here. So I'm going to pass in a parameter, and I can change that. I can keep all of this stuff here because it's going to be from the product table. And let's go to our allocated tests. Now its test name is product2. The test type is just package, like so. Now I don't need the allocated values from these ones because I'll just get rid of all of this stuff. Now in this case what I do need to do is I'm going to put in a par1. Now in this case I'm going to put in the same parameter, small. So I'm actually going to use a different method to find a small package, but I'm going to pass this as a parameter. I'm going to keep my allocated value 5 there this time, and I'm also going to set this to unique find. So now we can close this and we can run it one more time, and that's complete. So let's go back to our data allocation folder and look at the report. Now this is interesting. So what's happened now is we've run the same piece of SQL, and what we're doing is to make sure is that it's still valid for ID number 5. So what we're looking to do is to try and retain the value 5 in the first test case. If it doesn't find one, it will then go and look for another one. And that's really to do if the criteria has changed. So if that particular product ID has been changed to a medium package, for example, it wouldn't get picked up. Now the second one, it's looking for, because it's unique, it's going in here and it's looking for a not in 5, so it's looking for a different one. Now if we come and have a look at our two test cases, because they are linked to the ID of the product, it's going to try and find different allocated values. So you've got unique yes and unique no, like so. What you'll see also in the results, it will say data still valid. So originally we had a 5 and it's run for the second time and it said you can still use that one. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at how you issue a join. So let's just pop into our SQL query window. So in this case I'm going to be joining two tables, order item and product. This is the join key, and the criteria is going to be on the package small again, but in this case I'm going to be looking for the order ID. I'm going to pull out a specific order ID associated with a small package. So if we just run that, there's going to be 1, 2, 3 of them actually, and we're going to then allocate those to a test. So let's go back into our spreadsheet and start building up the criteria. So what I've done here, yes, SQL, I've called it small order this time, same connection. This is the where clause, and you can see I can use my aliases in here like so, and in the table name what I've done is actually just put the components of the from statement in here, and the key name is the order ID. Now I've got to go and do some allocated tests. Now what I've done here, I've created 3 different tests, order 1, order 2 and order 3. I'm using small order like so, which refers to the test type. Now in this case I'm going to do unique finds no, and this one is yes. So to summarize, we're going to be using a join, that's the where criteria, this is our allocated tests. We're going to do 3 different tests, but these 2 I don't particularly care if they're non-unique, so let's just save this and run it. So that's finished, and let's have a look at the spreadsheet. Now you can see unique find no and no. Now what that means is that the allocated values are actually the same. Now you would normally use this for something like reporting, where you're not actually going to be transacting against the data. In this case we've said unique find yes, and we've now been able to pull in allocated value 9, so an order ID 9. So we've taken our test criteria, which was a join, we've passed it through to our allocated test. Dependent on the unique yes and no, we've now allocated each of these tests a specific allocated value, which we can then use inside our testing. Now we're just going to do one final thing, which is to populate the expected results column. So to do that we go into the test criteria section. So here you'll find an expected results SQL, so let's just go over here. Now the column we want is the product name in this case. What I'm going to do is just pull in the product name, and that's going to be populated in the spreadsheet as well. And I'm going to do it for all of the products actually, so let's pop that in there like that. Now the idea of the expected results is you can go and issue pretty much any query you like, so you could do maybe in ins or groups or joins, etc., or subqueries to go and populate some additional results associated with the ID that you find from the order ID. Now I've got to go back to my allocated tests. They've already got allocated values, so I'm just going to lose those to do with the products, and let's leave everything else the same, save that, and let's run it again, and that's complete. And let's go and look at our allocated values. Now what you'll see here is that we've actually carried through the product name into the expected results. In this case it's found the same values, 5 and 6. So that's a very useful way of being able to pass that into tests to kind of look up values in back-end databases, which are a bit more sophisticated than just the unique key. So that was what you're processing, which is the product IDs. These are the order IDs, and those are the expected results that we'd expect to see at the end of our automation script, for example. Now before I finish, I would encourage you to go and look at another spreadsheet, which is the VIP TDM which is used in another one of the videos, and this actually contains quite a lot of more sophisticated types of things to look at. So here, for example, if you get an SQL error, you're going to get it in here. Now the way to solve that in this case is because it wasn't connecting, but it could be something to do with the SQL, and what you could do is go and look at your report.txt to make sure that you've specified it correctly. Here you can see we're looking for 20 allocated values. With these ones here, what we're actually looking for are columns. If you look at the test criteria for test name, for a test type of USA sale, you'll see it's actually got a couple of columns, and those are separated by semicolons. So there's lots of interesting stuff in this particular spreadsheet, so have a little look around just to get used to the more advanced features of VIP data allocation. Thank you very much.